President and CEO of Easterseals, and we just want to welcome you to this afternoon's conversation. I am extremely excited to be joined by two incredible people. The first is Rick Miller, who is the author of this book, Be Chief. I want to just say, if you haven't read this book, you have to get it and read it. And the reason I say that is that Rick has put some incredible, valuable information for all of us, no matter where you are in your organization, from CEO to front desk staff. The other thing I just want to say, and what I'm really grateful for, is that Rick is donating all of the proceeds from the sale of this book to Easterseals. Isn't that wonderful? And so we're just really glad to hear from Rick and help as he leads us in this discussion. But I really am excited about introducing my new friend, Terry Rasmussen, who is the CEO of Thrivent. And I'm just really excited that Terry is a part of the conversation today. And I'm going to turn it over to her to introduce herself. Oh, and one other thing, for those of you that website and learn about Easterseals. Easterseals is the largest disability serving organization in the country. We change the way the world views and defines disabilities, and we want to make sure that all people are 100% included and 100% empowered. So 1 in 4 people live with disabilities, and Easterseals is here to serve those individuals as well as their families. All right, Terry, sorry about that.
Well, thanks, Angela. And it is great to be here with you. And I too will echo the plug for the book here. It's for everybody, and it's a great read. It's a quick read, and you will get a lot out of it. I know I sure did. Like Angela said, my name is Terry Rasmussen. I'm the president and CEO of Thrivent. We are a diversified financial services company, and our purpose is we believe that humanity thrives when we make the most of all we've been given. And our promise to our clients is to help them achieve financial clarity so that they can lead lives full of meaning and gratitude. And I know a lot of our clients, Easterseals is very important to them and the work that you do, Angela. And so again, it's just my privilege to be here today. And now I'd like to turn it over to Rick Miller.
Thank you, Terry. Great to be with you all. This session was put together when Angela and I first started thinking about the incredible positive impact that Easterseals is bringing to millions of people. And in fact, running a large organization as she does things to increase the positive impact of every employee. Now we're talking about, between employees and volunteers, over 70,000 people that Angela leads. And so how do you do that? How do you have that number of people bring a positive impact every day to work? We'll talk about that today. And we'll talk about the tremendous success that Terry is driving at Thrivent, because similarly, Thrivent is an organization that serves 2.3 million customers, and the positive impact that her employees bring affect millions of people every day. So today's session, a little bit of introduction first by me. I've had a bunch of different titles. I've worked in a bunch of different industries, from internet startup to multinational. I've got some degrees. I read a lot of books, as you can see behind me. But I want to start out with a quick story, because Angela and Terry and I are going to tell some stories today, hopefully that'll be memorable, that will help you wherever you are, whether you have a title or not, bring a positive impact to work. And the story I want to share is a quick one about why I'm so passionate about this topic of positive impact. I grew up in Massachusetts. Oldest of 3 boys, had 2 wonderful parents. Unfortunately, my mom was hospitalized for most of my life. So my dad really raised me and my 2 younger brothers as a single parent. But Dad had a job. He was a human resources director in a machine tool shop in Worcester, Massachusetts. Now, growing up in Massachusetts was a wonderful place. Yeah, we drop our ahs every once in a while. We talk kind of funny. And we're very sports oriented, 3 boys growing up with Dad. And I remember all those things. But what I remember most were conversations at the kitchen table. Because as a very young man, I guess, young boy, I would hear stories about recognition, and I'd hear stories about communication, and I'd hear stories about values. And it seemed kind of strange to me, but as I grew up, I realized what Dad's job really was. Now, to explain that, you need to know a little bit about manufacturing in central Massachusetts. It's a wonderful group of companies there, but generally most of the machine tool shops are union shops. Now, unions do a wonderful job. I'm not anti-union in any way, shape, or form, but Dad's job was to create an environment between the workers at the Heald Machine Company and the management at the Heald Machine Company was so positive. There was such a wonderful open sharing of information that the union wasn't needed. So I will tell you with considerable pride that in my dad's 27 years at the Heald Machine Company, there was never even a union vote. 27 years. So I've considerable pride in Dad in what he did. Yes, he was a human resource guy. To me, he was my hero. And I think knowing a little bit about Terry's background and Angela's background, this won't be the first time or the last time you hear stories about a dad and influence on us, moms and dads and leaders. But I share that story because it is all about communication and values and the things that the organizations can stand for. And I learned a lot from Dad. So everything else I've learned was basically telling me Dad was right. So in today's session, we've kind of set up two sections. One is, and by the way, we are going to thank you both partners for talking a little bit about this book called Be Chief. By the way, the subtitle is Be Chief. It's a choice, not a title. Mm-hmm. So we've talked, the three of us, about how we can provide some value to you. And we're so grateful that you joined us today. And we're going to divide our conversations into two pieces. One is if you do happen to have a manager title, you could be a first level manager, a second level manager, or be at the top of the organization, much like Angela and Terry are. It doesn't matter. If you're the manager of people, you have a wonderful opportunity to create an environment where people will bring their A game every day. Right? They can have a positive impact. They show up excited to work. And one of the things we're going to start with is a couple of stories from my now friends about what they're doing, what's succeeding, how do you run large, diverse organizations and allow everybody to bring their A game. So Angela, I'd love to start with you in particular because you and I have spent a bit of time talking about values, and we're certainly in a very challenging time. And values, many organizations have values identified, but Easterseals has done a magnificent job, particularly in the world of COVID, using values to help further your mission. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Thanks, Rick. And absolutely. So go back to how I just introduced Easterseals quickly when we talk about all people 100% included and 100% empowered. When you think about the world of work, we spend a lot of critical hours every day with a group of individuals. And so it's important that we create community and obviously be in relationship, because you can't get the job done unless you're in relationship with each other and communicating. And Rick, one of the things that you just talked about is the power of communication. When COVID hit, we all went home to work, and we all know how challenging that has been for all of us. You're there, you're at home with your cat, your dog, and the hamster. You're home with kids, you're home with spouses or loved ones or other people. And so it's all been about how do we stay in community and in relationship with each other and make sure that everybody's included and empowered. So what we did when we went home to start working in March, we really utilized virtual platforms. And at the national staff level, we stayed engaged with each other using those platforms to see each other if someone chose to turn on the camera. Nationally, we had calls and used virtual meetings as a way to stay connected across the country. Then we decided that we can also use virtual platforms to have fun. So for example, yesterday, some of the folks that are behind today's virtual platform and helping out led a discussion around horror movies. And so the team got on to talk about their favorite horror movies, what's good, throwback, current, what's been newly released. Some of our colleagues have been sharing their cooking skills and great recipes virtually. And then really now, here's the hard work. We sent out Fitbit minutes. And so now we divide it up into teams, and we have this step challenge. So the number of steps per day. So again, one of the things that's really important is communicating, staying connected with each other. And guess what? It's not the CEO's job to do that alone. It's all of our responsibilities. So that's what we've experienced, and that's what we are doing currently, and will continue to do, is to communicate and continue to create community.
What a great example. What a super example. And I want to stay with values for a minute. Terry, I know that you have had incredible success recently in establishing advisory teams. Would you share that story?
Yes, I would love to. So for us, it really does focus on values. And at Thrivent, we have 5 values. I would say 3 are just baked into our DNA, and 2 are a bit more aspirational for us, but all 5 of them really came to play with advisory teams. So briefly, our DNA values are: we live in service, we do what's right, and we get things done. We really, those are core to us. It's how we show up each and every day. Our 2 more aspirational ones are: we act as one team and we think big. And I think those 2 aspirational values were really put into play because back in March, I think we also saw what was coming. And so very quickly, we put together 2 SWAT teams. And we were really clear as a team, using our values, that protecting and making sure that our workforce as well as our clients were safe was our number 1 priority. And so we assembled a team of a SWAT team that was really focused on our workforce. What did they need going through this pandemic, and how could we make sure that we were helping them make the transition to the remote working environment as quickly as possible? We're also in financial services, and in times like this, quite frankly, our clients need us more than ever. So we had a second SWAT team that really focused on making sure that we could continue to serve clients, that we could continue to actually provide them great advice. And those 2 teams really assembled this great cross-organizational team that came together very quickly, and in a matter of very few weeks, we moved about 7,000 people to work remotely. We actually, had Zoom and Microsoft Teams, and so that our financial professionals in the field could serve clients, hold their hands, because keep in mind, during this pandemic, we had a lot of market volatility as well. And so reaching out to clients and telling them, stay the course, it'll be okay, was really important. And so those 2 teams really managed to come together, and we acted as one team. We thought big. We actually responded to the needs of our workforce and our clients to make sure that we were there for them. And we did not skip a beat. In fact, some of the clients who called into our call center didn't realize that these call center professionals were working from their homes. They were really quite surprised to hear that.
That's a great example. And values are where both your organizations start. And the fact that you've both been able to leverage your strong view on and practices around values. I've got a little tip. We're talking about tips for the audience. I've got a tip, a simple tip for the audience as well. I've worked in a lot of different organizations, and one of the tips I like to use is, it's called taking the values off the wall and put them on the agenda. The next time, if you're a manager and you have an agenda for a meeting, why don't you divide all the topics you have under the categories of your values, right? How do you make them live, eat, sleep, breathe, and dream? You have to exercise them. And the examples that both Angela and Terry gave are great. My third one is just think about your next meeting. Organize your agenda by the values. And what will that say to your employees when you do? Values are a great place to start, and actually the foundation of the incredible now 100-year-plus success of both of these organizations. It's pretty impressive. Another area I want to just touch on briefly is the area of recognition. In this time when people are working so hard, I know, Terry, one example is the national rollout of your rebranding. And some of the recognition that you did for a very special group of people. Would you share that story?
Oh, I'd love to. Well, and it's I'll set a little context, because here we are And we've worked this last year really refocusing on our restating our purpose, our promise, our principles, and our values. And we realized that at Thrivent, if you know about us, you love us, but very few people know about us. And so we have a brand problem. And so we decided we were going to relaunch our brand and make it more digital first and more modern so that we could start to prepare to serve the next generation of clients. And then, of course, the pandemic hit, and so we really thought long and hard. I mean, is this the time to launch a brand? And we decided it's the perfect time to launch a brand. And so we launched our first ever ad campaign, our national ad campaign, which I have to say for our employees and our workforce in general was a real source of pride because we saw ourselves on national TV for the first time ever, which was pretty cool. We saw ourselves in ads in the Wall Street Journal and, the USA Today and, local papers everywhere, which was really fun. And we heard about us on national radio. So it was really, really fun. And as a part of that, then it was, let's celebrate with the team that worked so hard in this environment to put this all together and launch it in just such a spectacular way. And so we were toasting and we were, celebrating really the great work that went on because it was really, it was just such an incredible success for us. And it showed us that in somewhat the more challenging times, we can come together as a team and accomplish great things, sometimes accomplish more things than we actually think we can. And so it was really fun to see.
Yeah, what an incredible success story, and recognition I know is done. As I learn more about the 67 affiliates that Angela shepherds across her broad geographic area, I'm very aware that Easterseals and Angela, I would like you to talk a little bit about this, has an interesting model in that there's such strong direction out of Chicago, out of the national office to pull it all together. Yet you also have a decentralized focus. I'll see different organizations doing different things because, I grew up in Boston. All politics are local, Tip O'Neill used to say. And so the way that you allow those 67 affiliates to excel in their own area, yet leverage the great support that comes out of national. Could you talk a little bit about how that dynamic works? Because I think that flexibility has got to be a real asset in the days of COVID.
Well, thanks. And Rick, I do want to take issue on this one phrase, allow the Easterseals affiliates. I don't allow them to do anything. So I just want to make sure in case they're listening, I know I don't
They're
allow
listening.
them to do anything.
They are listening. They are listening.
But what I really do appreciate about the Easterseals network is that we are a federated organization, but it's very local in flavor in that each of the 67 affiliates provide services to their community in a way that best suits that community. And so they show up for their community in various ways. But at the end of the day, there's still that commonality and that thread by which Easterseals offers its services. And that is really, again, making sure that there's 100% empowerment and inclusion for people with disabilities. And even some of our affiliates that don't, for example, provide specifically disability therapies, they provide early childhood intervention and early childhood programs, which again, still give children that great start in life that may potentially start off with other environmental issues and what we call the social determinants of health, which is nutrition or poverty and all of those things. So that's how Easterseals shows up, and it's incredible in its vastness and in its variety, but it's the best way possible that we're there to serve the 1 in 4 people living with disabilities.
Yeah, it's such, and that's the way you are structured. So point well made and well taken. But to bring it to our audience, I think the tip here, so we're talking about tips that we can offer managers at any level. If you're a manager and you might be mid or higher level, the tip here is to think about, in a time of crisis, how can you resist the urge to try to centralize things? because that's a muscle memory for a lot of managers. Things are tough. Maybe we ought to pull in the reins. When in fact, some of the most successful organizations will face tough times, and they'll ask themselves the question, how many of the decisions, because the people who are closest to the clients are out there, can we push out those decisions?
And
So
Rick,
that's the tip.
that's a wonderful tip. And let me just one quick example of that is that because our Easterseals employees around the country are working, sometimes providing services in people's homes, or people are coming to our facilities, or we are actually working in school districts and in various locations. And we also have group homes where we staff those group homes 24/7 with our participants. So the frontline staff have to real time make decisions and feel empowered to make decisions that are for the best outcome for our participants. So absolutely what you're saying, the word I come up with is creativity, and being able to be creative in the moment is important. And so it doesn't matter if you're working at the front desk, if you're at on the call center, or if you're working in a group home, or you're one-on-one with a participant in the moment. That's what we see real time with the work that our staff does. And we have 35,000 employees across the country. And that's what's so incredible, especially our direct service providers. They are the hands and feet right there on the ground working with people.
Yeah, that's critical. Absolutely critical. As I said, those 35,000 also work very closely with another 40,000 volunteers.
Yes.
So what you described is critical. I've got a story to add. I've worked in many different organizations, and one of the things I've come to understand is in a time of crisis, one of the keys is simplification, right? We have, in larger organizations, we have many things we're trying to communicate. There's lots of programs, lots of constituents, lots of issues. And I just want to share a very simple approach that I took that worked. So here's a tip. An organization I walked into was a Fortune 10 company when I walked in. It was huge, had lots of things going on. And I thought there was a need, because we were losing market share, we weren't doing well, was to simplify to all of our employees what was important. So when talking to the recruiting people, what's important in terms of the people that we want to bring into the organization? In any organization, well, in many organizations, people ask, what do I need to do to get promoted? People want to know, what do I need to do to move up? And I thought there was a simple way of answering both those questions. And this is what I developed. That's it. I, the number 3, the letter K. So this became kind of a fun little story that came in what was then and still is AT&T. And people, when I was brought in, because things weren't going well and I was there to help an organization turn some things around, they said, well, what's important to the new guy? And I said, I, 3, K. Okay, what's it stand for? And I kept repeating it. Well, it stands for 4 very important things. I wanted everyone to demonstrate intelligence, intensity, integrity, and kindness. To me, that was the simple sauce of people who wanted to get ahead, who people want to know what's expected, right? Intelligence, intensity, integrity, and kindness, which means we want smart people to work hard with each other with a high degree of trust and respect and all the things that are important, but to be good to each other, right? To be good to each other. So this simple little diagram got spread amongst tens of thousands of people. It was successful. So you don't need to use mine, but remember, people love simplicity. So if you can take complex things and create some clarity, it can give you a boost. Can give you a boost. So as I think about the things that we're all doing, one of the things I wanted to also ask a little bit about, and this is one that did not come up in our pre-question, so this is a little bit of a curveball I'm throwing both of you. When you think about training and education and the things that are going on at both your organizations, how are you looking at trying to equip your employees with the changing dynamics that you face? Are you seeing in your organizations any shift in education? And as you think about your response, because I'm giving you some time now to think about it, since this is a curveball, I will tell you that many of the groups that I'm working with right now are big fans of what they call the 5-hour rule. The 5-hour rule basically says that to stay current, even where you are, you've got to put a minimum of 5 hours in each week to broaden your own perspectives, let alone what the organization may be able to do for you. But you need to take responsibility yourself to make sure that you're staying current. So it's not just my employer needs to send me to training. That's not the answer. You need to continue to learn in this incredibly diverse and ever-changing world. But I would like to, Terry, I'll start with you. What's Thrivent doing in the area of education or training to help your employees address the many changes in the financial services segment that you lead?
Well, a lot of things. We're starting to really focus on employee growth and development. And the mantra I've had at Thrivent for at least the last 5 years is, keep your skills current. Because the expectation of skills today is changing rapidly, particularly in this era of technology and changing consumer sentiment. And really, there's a power shift going on from, I think, companies having structures that, basically reach out and provide products to consumers consuming information and actually deciding whether or not to engage with you. And so a lot of our effort is around keep your skills current. In order to do that, you've got to have an outside in view. And so for us, it's really encouraging people to spend the time to say what's happening out there, and don't just look at financial services. You've got to look at other industries that are really further ahead in especially serving clients and becoming what we call more customer centric. And so we're really encouraging people to do that. Now, if you, and I've got a great HR team and a great head of talent, and what they would both say is that if you're learning and growing and developing, education is a component of that, but there's nothing better than experience and experiential learning. And so it's how do we actually, provide that experiential learning for people to try something. And I'm a firm proponent of, if you're feeling a little uncomfortable when you're trying something new, that's a good thing because you're learning and growing. And so we try and create a safe environment for people to try things, because I always say, what's the worst that can happen? You learn something, And so it's really creating that ecosystem, that environment to encourage people to grow and develop and experiment and try things, because in my opinion, everything's fixable. If you try something and it doesn't work, it's all fixable.
Well, that's terrific. And Angela, I see your head nodding as fast as mine is. I'm sure Easterseals is taking somewhat of a similar approach, but share your stories. That'd be great.
So two things. One, from the national office perspective, what our HR department did was she identified a platform where people could go on and take e-learning classes. And so that's been made available to staff. And that's a wonderful way of people learning something different or sharpening their skills and their tools. The second thing I would say about our national office team is that I've told them that I view us almost as a startup. And so I encourage being scrappy. I encourage people cross-pollinating amongst departments so that it's not, well, this is my department, this is what we do. If there's an opportunity or a need in another department to work with somebody, I'm all for it. I don't care. It's just a matter of let's just get the job done. We have a huge task ahead of us, and I'm excited about doing that. The second thing I would point out is from a network-wide perspective with our 67 affiliates, how we've created these affinity groups, national affinity groups, as best practices sharing platforms and idea generating. So for example, we have an HR affinity group. We have an early childhood affinity group. We have a CFO affinity group, and on and on. And we have a camp affinity group. And I'd love to just share an example of what our camping professionals did quickly, because as we all know, summertime is a great opportunity where we get to go to camp, kids get to go to camp. It's a wonderful experience. Well, Easterseals operates these fully inclusive camps around the country so that kids with disabilities have the opportunity to climb rock walls and to get in pools and do all the things that able-bodied kids or non-disabled kids would do when they go to camp. And unfortunately with COVID, we had to shut down the camps. Well, our camping professionals said, but we've got to do something. So they are just about done with creating a virtual camp experience that will be launching soon, so that parents can have access to it. And it has different things and ways of getting the kids engaged and moving and having a camp experience even while they're at home. So that's an example again of just how when you bring people together and they are like-minded and want to solve for a problem, they can do it, and they can come up with things that are exciting and meaningful, and I think are long-lasting.
That's super examples. Wow, just wow. Again, for those who are tuning in now, we're about halfway through our session, and we've been focusing on managers at any level, what you can do to create environments where you and your team can have more of a positive impact. Anybody can. I want to throw just a couple out here before we pivot. And the one I wanted to talk about a little bit is on how to get started, right? So you're hearing this conversation from two accomplished leaders, and you're saying, you know, I probably as a manager could do more. Where could I start? And I would offer that it's not hard, right? So the suggestion I would make is to, much as Terry gave the example early on, you know, pull a small team together, right? Don't try and do it yourself. If you're a manager at any level, pull some of your team members together and say, you know what, I think we're doing some things really well. I think we need to do some things better. And I want to open us up to be thinking differently. And so that would be step one. Step two would be, as a manager, to actually ask something that managers don't often ask. Ask your team, what do you think we should stop doing? Because many times we'll say, hey, I've got a new idea. And people look at it and say, oh my goodness, there's another brick being added to the load that I'm carrying. If you start out by saying, you know, there's some things that we do that may have made sense a while back, but maybe are dated and aren't helping us where we're going to go. What if we first think about what we should stop doing to create space for what we should be doing, right? That would be step two. Step three would be implement something and celebrate an early win. Celebrate an early win. Make a hero out of a member of your team who provided a new idea. Reinforce what you're doing. And then the next part I would offer is to tell a story about that success. Stories travel. Metrics and measurements are all fine, but stories travel. So if you're thinking about getting started, that might be helpful. And the last one I want to offer is one doesn't maybe get as much play unless you're a fan of Brene Brown. Let me explain. A lot of people believe, yeah, many are. A lot of people believe that when things get tough, a leader, person with a title, has got to put their shoulders back and demonstrate that they have a firm control on what's going to happen. By the way, that's an illusion. Mm-hmm. The fact of the matter is, when you show that you, as a leader, perhaps with a title, can be vulnerable, you'll be amazed at what happened. Now, let me tell you a quick story to back that up. I had been at AT&T for a couple of years as an outsider, and we'd done some pretty good things. But I was not connecting with my employees as I would like to. We had offered a voluntary termination program at one point, and I was in front of a group of people, and someone stood up and said, Rick, I'm very concerned about my spouse who is recovering from cancer. And all of these changes in my health benefits make me unsure. Now, he said these words, you may not understand what that's like, but for me, it's traumatizing to think about changing my health care with my spouse. Now, I chose that time to share in a public forum for the first time that I'm a cancer survivor. It's not something that I talk a lot about. I'm also a type 1 diabetic. I talk a lot about that because people are very aware. But to put myself out, to show the vulnerability, not as this, this person who's in to have all the answers, but to be real. And it was amazing to me by just sharing in a little bit, say, yeah, I do understand, maybe more than you know, and I gave just a little bit of my story. But the reaction I got from my team afterwards was amazing. People would come up to me finally 2 years later and start to look at me as a person who they could interact with. And it all came out of vulnerability. So if you haven't picked up Brene Brown's books, Dare to Lead, or many of the others that are out, Brene does a wonderful job linking courage to vulnerability. And I just want to give my two friends an opportunity to talk a little bit about vulnerability, because they are clearly strong leaders. But my guessing is they could share a little bit about how their vulnerability has made them even more effective as leaders. Angela, first.
So I'd like to do a little twist on what you just said, Rick, because the other word for me is authenticity. And then even another word that we can talk about is transparency. So being who you are. One of the things that I have learned over the years is that people bring their whole selves to work. So if you're having a crisis at home, things are not going well at home, you don't just shove that in the back of your mind, open the front door to your office building and show up and get to work. It comes in with you. And I used to sometimes say, okay, do I have a sign on my door that says that the therapist is in? Because people wanted to come in and talk and share their stories and what's going on in their lives. And it would sometimes end up being counseling sessions. But going back to why I said bringing your authentic self to work is because I had this experience. I'm an ordained minister, graduated from seminary, and also a lawyer, and now a CEO. But I always had two resumes. I had my lawyer resume, and then I had my ministry resume. One day I was sitting at my desk at my law firm, and the partner came and said, Angela, how's business going? How are you doing in terms of generating business and connecting and bringing in new clients to the firm? And I started, throwing off excuses. Well, the other partners aren't giving me a chance, blah, 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 blah. And he said to me, how many resumes do you have? I said, well, I have two. Why? And he said, does that mean that you're two people? And I said, well, of course not. I'm one person. What do you mean? And he said, well, you're not being authentic, and people resonate with people who are authentic. So why, instead of having two resumes, don't you have one and just be who you are and your total self? So in going through, and then he introduced me to some classes and some courses that I took and really embraced what I learned. But again, being your authentic self, who you are, really helps out. So, for example, one time I had one of my executive assistants come in, and she was crying, couldn't focus on getting documents out. And I was like, what's wrong? My car, her thing was her car had been repossessed the night before. So I stopped what I did to get on the phone, help figure it out, make some phone calls so that she could get her car back. But she was a mom, she had to go pick up her kids. Or another example, after 9/11 hit, you can all imagine at that time I was in Washington, D.C., a number of people were touched, either because they had family members or knew people in the Pentagon, or they had relationships, colleagues, et cetera, in New York. And there was so much grief. And the partner of the law firm said, Angela, can you please put together a worship service experience, a prayer, whatever? He said, just do what you do. And in the conference room of one of these top 5 international law firms, we brought folks together to be able to have an expression and a way to express their grief. One of our colleagues sang a song. Another colleague offered up prayer. But again, when you bring your authentic self and your vulnerabilities and recognize that people may be going through something, and you practice your value of kindness or gratefulness or connectedness or whatever it is that you value, that's how you make the workplace even better. And more importantly, you really touch your colleagues.
Yeah. And you model something that you want them to do, right? Which is to bring their whole selves.
Yes.
Right. Terry, I'm going to ask you to offer something on this because it's such an important topic.
Yeah, it really is. And I was smiling when you referenced Brene Brown, because I've had our entire leadership team read that book, because it's very important. And it starts, I think, with really understanding yourself, and starting to ask some questions about. I ask questions about, okay, what am I good at? But then what am I really not very good at? And I have to, and I share that with my executive team. And I said, there are times you got to save me from myself. And so the joke is, and I have a great team, but they said, yeah, Terry's very decisive. She'll make a decision. You just have to make sure she's got the right facts in front of her before she makes the decision, and I mean, they know that about me. And so together, we are so much better as a team, because we can tell each other, look, I'm really good at this, but I really need help with this. And so as a team, when we are vulnerable and we can say, where we need help, where we're unsure, it's really important, because in so much of what we're confronting today, there is not a playbook. And if anyone tells you otherwise, they're making it up, because we're confronting new environments and new issues each and every day. And your values, it comes back to your values again. You got to really hold those internally, but you also need to know yourself well enough to know, what am I good at and what am I not good at, and how do you surround yourself as leaders? You've got to surround yourself with a diverse team, that the power of the team is so much more greater than just any one individual in the team.
So right, and a great way to do a slight pivot now, just to review where we've been. We've been talking to two incredible leaders about, if you are a manager, what can you do to create a positive impact for everybody on your team and extended teams. I want to shift a little bit now to what if you're not a manager? What if you don't have a title of a manager? You are on the front lines, if you will. You're either the receptionist entering or greeting people as they come in the door, or you're in the front lines, and however you want to claim that. But you want to increase your positive impact. How do you do that? I want to offer, and again, it is all laid out in the book, but we've got another way for you to get part of that as well, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But 4 steps, right? The first thing I would like you, if you don't have a title and you want to increase your positive impact, the first thing I'm going to ask you to consider is to redefine the word power. Redefine it. Once you redefine it, you can measure it, you can increase it, and you can spread it. And we're going to go down that path with the time that we have left. These two incredible leaders have power in part because of their titles. No one's going to say they don't. But they are powerful completely independent of their titles. I would argue that they are powerful because they have 5 things. They have confidence, clarity, energy, influence, and as a result, they have impact. They had that long before they had these titles, long before. You know people who are confident, yet they have no title. They have clarity, they have no title. They have high energy, they have no title, right? They have influence, they have no title. So the tool that I would like to introduce you to, and you'll see it pop up with the technicians on the screen, is I have developed a tool. I call it the Power Compass. And first and foremost, please know it's free. It's free because it's so important that no one should be charging for important free things. Yes, you'll get a chance to fill it out. Both my friends have filled theirs out. We're going to be talking about it in a minute. But basically on one page, in my opinion, you will get tips. Remember, this is about tips. 25 great tips for you to be more powerful. Simple things to be more powerful. Now, as we go down this path together, again, I've got 2 incredible leaders with us. I'm going to ask you both to check your titles at the door now, and maybe go back a little bit when you didn't have these lofty titles and the tens of thousands of people that you manage and everything else and millions of customers, and go back to a time when you were perhaps starting out or looking at your career. And I'd like, again, to go to the power of stories. And Angie, I'd like to start with you. When you think about confidence, My guess is you were confident well before you became president and CEO of the great Easterseals organization. Maybe you could share a little bit about where that confidence came from.
Yes, I want to start by just talking a little bit about my background and how I grew up. My dad joined the Navy, and he was the fifth Black chaplain in the history of the United States Navy. And this was in the 1960s at the height of the Civil Rights Movement. My parents were very active in the Civil Rights Movement. My dad was the head of the NAACP for the state of South Carolina. He was at that time going around investigating lynchings. He was doing a lot of things in terms of integration. And then he decided to join the Navy. He was pastoring a Baptist church. My parents agreed, and we moved from South Carolina to San Diego, California. And you can imagine, first of all, the culture shock and being a 6-year-old in a completely new environment. And my brother was 3 years younger than me, but we grew up moving basically every 3 years, with my dad being in the military. And when you move every 3 years, you have to learn how to be integrated into a new community, meet new friends, learn how to excel in a new school, and to feel good about your environment, who you are, and where you're headed. So that whole experience of growing up in the military and moving really, I think, guided my brother and my sister and I in terms of us having a worldview, number one, but number two, never meeting a stranger. Number three, being fine just walking into a new environment in a new situation and not knowing anybody and saying, "Hi, how are you? I'm Angela. What's your name?" And that was the confidence boost that I think carried over clearly into adulthood, but also this whole notion of growing up with challenges and obstacles, or being told you can't do this, or not being included, or being rejected. And then you just have this inner strength and that inner voice that says, "I can and I will, and I'm going to show you." And so that also feeds into how I am. And one of the things that I do now, every other Sunday, I have this group of young women that I get together on Zoom with, and I call them the Daughters of Angela. And we just talk about work, we talk about spiritual things, and my goal is to impart into them confidence and to instill in them knowing that you all are young professionals. You can do just what I've done, and you can do more. And I want to do what I can to equip you and to pour into you all that I have, so that you can excel and take this world on like a mighty force.
What a great story. And as I said to the audience earlier on, they'd hear more about dads. And I think now we've heard from a very powerful story from yours. And Terry, I think it's time for your dad's story.
Yeah, it's it's interesting. And so in my case, I was born and raised in west central Minnesota on a farm, a grain farm. And unlike Angela, who moved every 3 years, I mean, the farm's still there. So, my entire childhood was there. And I had an older sister, and she was a very gifted artist. I mean, there was absolutely no question about what she would do with her life. I have a younger brother, and he loved the farm, and so there was really no question for him, what he was going to do. And then there was me, the middle child, and I was clueless, really. And so my dad came home from the dentist one day, who was a good friend of his, and said, "We've decided you're going to be a dental hygienist, because the pay's good. You can always find a job. You're never on call. And, you've always liked healthcare and, helping people, so we think that would be great for you." And so that's literally what I did. And all the time, because my dad, he was really, really concerned about, he said, he loved farming. That was his calling, as we say. And he said, you've got to find what you love to do, because you got to do it a long time. So you've got to love what you do. And so, and he would instill in me too, that, once you set your mind to it, you can do anything. You should have the confidence to do that. And so from a very early age, my dad really did instill that confidence in me. So now let's fast forward several years, like in 2015, and it is a summer in July in Minnesota, and I'm the general counsel at Thrivent at the time. My boss is a CEO, and we're sitting in his office on a Friday afternoon, and we're discussing org design. And, I laugh and say, we probably shouldn't have been doing that without HR, but we were. And he had this idea of restructuring the company, and, and I was, giving him advice on what I thought. And he finally paused and he said, or I guess I paused and I said, so should we talk about people now? Are you going to ask me for who do I think should you want to run all this stuff? And he said, yeah, he said, let's talk about it. And so he said, my thought was this person would run, this, and this person would run this. And then I said, well, who do you want to run like the core business? He goes, you. And I like got this sheer look of terror in my face. And, he was like, oh, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. You could try it, see if you like it. It was like, he could see that I was kind of internally freaking out. But then I came back to, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen? I learned something again. My dad had instilled confidence in me that try it, you'll learn something. And so it really did come back to, again, let's try it. I can do this. If I take it one step at a time, I can do this. And so it gets back to that confidence.
Yeah, and I think what we've all talked about is values for the organization, but I've got a simple statement that I like to use a lot because I believe it. And you guys have just kind of helped me reinforce it again in my own thinking, that values are not only the core of an organization, but they're the core of us each as an individuals. And I like to say, once you figure out where you stand, what values you stand for, once you figure out where you stand, you can take one. And when you take stands, you move ahead. You took a huge move ahead, Terry, in saying, you know what? I know what I stand for. I'm comfortable and I'm moving ahead. Angela, your whole career is taking stands, right? For other people and for yourself. Yes. But the confidence that comes from knowing your own values, and part of the Power Compass, by the way, is a request for you to identify your core 4 values. Once you have those, and by the way, it's not as easy as you think. If somebody asks you, what do you stand for, right? You've got to give it some thought, but the benefit of doing it, I'm not saying if you do it, audience, that you'll end up as CEOs like these 2 powerhouses. I'm not saying that, but you will have more confidence and you will have more power. There are other examples of power, how clarity is increased with discipline. I do want to make a point about energy, though, in the time we have remaining, because many people will say, boy, I'd like to get more energy. And the answer is not another cup of coffee. It's not another Mountain Dew, and it's not 5-hour energy. None of those things. What we try to develop in the book is a discussion of how you can really develop energy that will last. And I believe it really comes from a place that you might not think it comes from. I believe strongly that real energy comes from insight or self-understanding. When you, again, link it to where we're going, when you understand what your engine needs to run, right? And where does that come from? In an area, a point of time when the media is at us and there's just so much going on, how can you know how to listen to the most important voice that you could listen to, which, by the way, is your own? How can you separate everything else and create stillness? Now, if you're a meditator, I am. Sometimes it's a walking meditation. Sometimes it's more traditional meditation. Sometimes it's just listening to music. Where do you go? The tip is find a place to go to be still and learn to listen to your own voice, because everyone has got an opinion that they want you to have, whether it's a well-intentioned spouse or the media or anybody else. Everybody wants to have an influence on you, but developing your own voice, as these 2 incredible leaders have, allows you to, again, take that stand and have the energy, the conviction to move ahead. Time is short. So I want to ask one last question of these 2 superstars. You each, independent of your title, are powerful, and that power you've seen energize other people, right? Just because of who you are. Could you each tell a story about somebody in your organization who might not be high up in the totem pole, who might be on the front lines, who has done things that has because power spreads, it's contagious. The kind of power we're talking about, the confidence, clarity, energy. Could you each tell a story about someone in your organization who was powerful without the title? Terry?
Yes, I have a great story to tell, and it gets again back to our values about really empowering our workforce to do the right thing. So one of the financial products that we sell is long-term care insurance. And during COVID, we do have people that are in long-term care facilities and in nursing homes. And one of our clients, she's 99, and she was in a care facility, but she was really starting to worry about her safety and her mental health with the pandemic. And her son was very concerned about that as well. And so this was a case where our employee, a frontline employee, was really empowered, had the courage to actually live our values and do what's right and really live in service. And so he made some really quick decisions and allowed the son to bring his mother home. And we said, no, we're still gonna cover that care because it's important for her, and it's doing the right thing. And so the son wrote an email and said that this individual had really presented. I mean, it was the warmest, the most patient ear of a young frontline leader or worker, and he assured her that Thrivent cared, and that he would talk to his superiors and get back as soon as possible to see, because this was outside of our contract. And in less than an hour, he called back and said, no, take your mom home. We'll continue to cover it because it was the right thing to do. And the person on the other end of the line said, I wish I could give you a big hug and kiss. You don't know what an impact this has made on our family, that we can do this and Thrivent's there. And so it really does demonstrate how that impact, if you empower people and you say, live our values, it works and it spreads. And I got to tell you, the organization, that story went through the organization like crazy. And we have stories like that each and every day, because again, it's about that kindness and it's about caring and doing the right thing.
Yeah, what a great story about how that powerful individual, maybe not power the way other people would define it, but made the right decision and had an impact that we're talking about now on a national broadcast, and has been part of the legend of service of Thrivent. Angela, I know you've got a bunch of them. Could I limit you to one?
So I will just say that because I want to do a shout out to a number of our staff that are on the front line. And I see this playing out through customer service, through the front door receptionist, through our call center where people are calling and looking for resources. And the people that answer that phone are just so helpful and won't give up until they can help direct you to the resource that you need. And then our direct service providers, the ones that go in and really care for individuals. And as I said, we have group homes and they require 24/7 staffing. And our staff will go stand in line to go get the really expensive toilet paper, or trying to find the PPE. I mean, you just name it. So I just want to say a shout out to all of our Easterseals folks that really are on the ground and really touching people in a very personal and real way.
Well, thank you. And I know, Angela, you get the final word, but I just want to say thank you to both of you, because the point of today is that it's a challenging time. Got it. Doesn't take much to figure that out. But the point is that with the examples that Easterseals is making, that Thrivent is making, there are lots of opportunity to lead, right? You can lead, you can have a positive impact, you can make a difference. All those things are right. And the examples that Angela has shared and that Terry have shared, there's many, many more. With the time that we have limited, I'm grateful for the opportunity to participate with the two of you. And Terry, maybe a last word from you before we go to Angela.
Well, and I would say it's been a privilege again, and Angela and Rick, it's been great to share the stage with you today. It does get back to really living your values, and I will say personally, When I took the Power Compass, you do have to take some time to really be reflective of what are your values. And some of them, will jump out to you really quickly, and others you're going to have to really contemplate. And so in my case, I'll just share one: courage. Courage has been something that is a real personal, deep-seated value in me. I know people that know me know that, and it shows up. But it also it gives me the confidence, the clarity, the courage, to really move forward and make some decisions sometimes that are not always easy, but again, guided by, the values. It makes it easier, if you will. And so I would encourage you to explore that. Because the other thing that my dad told me is, he said, make sure that you're defining success for yourself. Don't let others define success for you. And so I'll leave you with that, because that's something that I've held near and dear in my heart all these years, and it's served me well. So again, don't let others define success for you. You define success for yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, Terry and Rick. And I just want to say one last thing to people that are listening. Think about your dash. And your dash is that dash in between the time that you're born and the time that you die. And what is going to be said about your dash? And that's about your legacy, what you are doing to contribute to humanity. And it could be your family, it could be your community, and obviously the workplace, which is what we've been talking about. So again, I would say learn your values, know your values, live your values, and work your values. I want to thank Rick Miller again for this book, Be Chief. And if you buy it, all proceeds go to Easterseals. Terry, in the Thrivent community, it's been a pleasure getting to know you. Want to just thank you so much, and thank all of you for taking time out of your day to participate. So with that, we'll say goodbye and be chief.